going on. As of June 2011, 200 million tweets a day. That's 73 billion a year. And if you think of each one of those as a little conversation that's happening, that's a huge number of conversations and information that's flowing around. And just as an aside, you can see the sort of impact and effect these things are happening if you look at things like the Arab Spring that's just happened, where social media was a big tool in spreading the word, if you like, and the Wall Street sit-ins and things like that. But this rise of the number of conversations has got, I believe, major implications for each one of us, from a business perspective and as individuals. It's dramatically changed the way that information flows and how knowledge is shared and processed. And I personally believe that businesses who don't take these things seriously and who don't start making decisions now about how they're going to embrace these things and deal with it and understand how to work with it rather than against it. And I see too many organizations that, and we'll talk about it in a minute, who don't like this, who are uncomfortable with this new world. But businesses need to take it seriously, need to start taking action now if they want to get the most out of it and start taking advantage of it and avoid the risks that can take place as a result. And this evening, we could have talked about a number of the implications. We could have talked about the whole, maybe some of you have heard the word big data. How do people handle all this information? You might have heard about the acceleration of business processes and activities that's coming about as a result of some of these things. The change in culture, both at an individual level as well as within businesses, from where everybody's very protective about their personal information to being very open and just wanting to put it out there. And that's really a big cultural change, I believe. But instead, I'm going to focus on two areas. And the first of these areas is really what it's doing in terms of increasing consumer power. And as a business, this is what you need to be thinking about when you think about your customers and how power is shifting into their hands. And one of the things that's happening is that people are becoming more collaborative. They want to share more. They want to engage more. They want to have more conversations with you. It's no longer about calling the call center and trying to get access to you like that. This is about sharing information. It's about passing advice. It's about making recommendations, often unsolicited. And this is changing the way, as I said, that about how they want to engage with business. And you can see this from the way that buying decisions are increasingly made and have been sort of made over the past number of years in a growing way. More and more consumers go to the web for advice and go to some of these tools to find out what other people think and before they make their buying decision. And you need only think of something like a tool like a TripAdvisor and the absolute fear that it's striking into the hotel industry in many instances, because it's how it's affecting people's buying decisions when it comes to selecting hotels to stay in and so on. A Google study, and there's a book called The 0 Moments of Truth that's put out by Google, showed that in 1 year, but in 2011, the average shopper goes and finds 10 pieces of information before they make a buying decision. That's doubled in a year, because in 2010 it was only 5 pieces on average. And they do this by getting going to see what other people are saying. And they're not just going to other places for advice. They're also looking to the people they're dealing with and hoping that they've got the same conversation channels open that they're talking to their friends with. They're looking to businesses to have a Facebook page, to have a Twitter, a blog, and things like that. And increasingly, that's going to be, I was talking to an analyst at the Economist Intelligence Unit, and he said, it's no longer nice to have. It's no longer about whether it's useful or not. People will say, does this business have a Facebook page? Do they have a Twitter? If not, it's a black mark against their name straight away. It's a psychological thing increasingly. But many businesses are also seeing this as a major opportunity. And one example is that of Procter & Gamble, who slashed their R&D budgets in half as they moved from the traditional form of market research approaches to engaging directly with consumers on social platforms, listening to what they were saying to each other, and posing questions to them to find out what they really wanted. Adverts no longer work as well as they used to, but listening and having conversations with people online is. And if people are saying good things about you and have taken all the necessary steps to ensure that you are listening to them and that you are opening the right channels, that's all good and well. But what if they're not? I think the reality is that today you need to know what your customers are saying about you. And there are increasingly tools and methods available to understand what the sentiment is about your company and so on out there. One example, it's a great example, and some of you may have heard of it, of how powerful this can actually be in terms of how consumer power has shifted, is the example of one of the big threatened industries in the world, the airline industry. And it's the story of United Airlines and Dave Carroll. I don't know if you've heard about it, and the song on YouTube which he put out called United Breaks Guitars. Now the story is Dave Carroll was a musician, a Canadian musician, on his way to a gig in the US. And on the way, the baggage handlers damaged his guitars. After 9 months of trying to get compensation from United, he thought he'd put a song out on YouTube just for his friends. He wasn't expecting it to have many hits on it. On the first day, it had 150,000 views. It had 5 million views within 5 weeks. The damage to United lost $180 million in value within 4 days of this going out. It's been the topic of a Harvard Business School case study. If you go and look it up on YouTube today, you'll see it's got over 11 million hits, and there's derivatives of it with other hits as well. Dave Carroll is now a sought-after keynote speaker around the world, spreading the story. I don't think United was smiling after that one. Another story that I'll briefly tell you is about that of a lady by the name of Heather Armstrong, 34-year-old mother of 2, her youngest 8 weeks old. She decided she needed a new washing machine. And she went to a company called Maytag, you may know of it, which is a Whirlpool subsidiary. She bought the washing machine, but it was faulty. And numerous attempts of trying to get help and to get it replaced failed dismally. She actually asked the girl in the customer services department whether if she blogged or twittered about it would make any difference to the level of service she was receiving, and the person said no, it will all stay the same. What they didn't realize was that Heather Armstrong was a New York Times best-selling author, that she had a blog that received 350,000 unique visits a month. That's 4.2 million unique visits a year. Or that she had a Twitter with 1 million people following her. They fixed the problem pretty quickly. But the question is, how much damage had been done by the time they did fix it? How many people, how many of those million followers or those people going to a blog had decided against buying that washing machine themselves? And we probably won't ever know the answer to that. But the fact is, I'm still talking about it. You're all hearing about it tonight. You heard about United Airlines now. So people are talking about these things, and that's one of the reasons why you need to really understand and think about your consumer and how they're engaging with you and what they're saying and how you're going to leverage that as an opportunity and also work out how to handle the risk. In the past, they used to say if a customer had a good experience, they'd tell 1 to 3 people about you. If they had a bad experience, I think the numbers were something like 7 to 10 people would find out about it. Nowadays, the potential is there that that number could run into millions, and none of us, I think, want to have that happen to us. So it's all about managing the risk, but even more importantly, I think this presents us with a massive opportunity as businesses to engage with our customers, and engage with the consumer, and really work out how we can work out more effectively with them and drive our business in a more positive direction.